Hey everybody, Holly Schindler here, and I promised late last year at the beginning of this one that I was going to put a book together in real time, out in the open, show what it was like. And this is the beginning of that process. So this is the first thing I need to do. The manuscript I'm going to do is actually a rewrite. And the reason for that is that I have not a drawer of unfinished, unpublished manuscripts. I have a corner of unfinished, unpublished manuscripts. I know a lot of you have a ton of these unfinished, unpublished manuscripts as well. And I want to show you how I'm doing it, what the results are, so that you can go through the process yourself, rescue all those drawer manuscripts that you still believe in, you just have lost your way with. Now, if you just want just the facts, ma'am, writing post, you can skip to this part of the video and it'll take you straight to my advice for, how to start your manuscript. Basically what I like to do is I like to divide my manuscripts into acts and then plot each act. It just lets me work with, more manageable chunks. So I'm telling you in the advice part of this video, the writing advice part, how to address Act 1, like what actually goes in Act 1. I know a lot of writing advice really overloads you with everything that needs to go into that first act or first 25%. It usually looks a lot like this. And, to be honest, you actually do need all that stuff in that first 25%. I'm not going to lie, you need all that stuff. But writing a book is all about taking a huge thing and just breaking it into manageable chunks. That's it. In a nutshell. So my advice in the writing section of this is to look at two components. There are really two jobs that first act needs to accomplish. And if you can accomplish those two, then you can worry then after that about filling in all this other stuff. But I thought, maybe everyone would sort of like to hear my sad tale of woe. Every writer has one. And a lot of times we just totally suffer in silence. And I thought maybe it would help someone else to hear what has happened to me, where I've been in my career, all the ups and downs, and the fact that I'm still here and I'm still working on it. Where I am and how I'm approaching it at this stage of the career, 25 years into this. I'm going to tell you this story while I sift through my manuscript drafts. I know I've got 800 different versions of this book that I'm going to be writing, and I know I need to get them all together so that I can figure out exactly what I want to use, not use, all that good stuff. So, okay, I got out of college in 2001. I had my master's degree. I did a creative thesis. And, leading up to graduation, I really thought that I was not going to have that hard of a time getting published. I honest to God thought that. Because, I went to school here at Springfield at SMS, and I was always kind of hauled out as being one of the better writers in the department. And I had gotten some publications before I graduated. I got short stories and some literary critique published. I won, for real. I won a poetry contest one summer. I won $750 in a poetry contest when I was in grad school one summer. That is crazy money for poetry. At the end of this summer, I had more cash in hand than my then boyfriend, and he had a job. I really thought I was going to get out. I was going to write a book. I was given an opportunity. My family knew how important writing was to me, and they said, "You have a dream. You don't have any debt right now when you're out of college. Please give writing a full-time shot." So I did. I 100% believed it would take a year or so to write a manuscript. It would sell, and I'd be off and running. Right. I was teaching piano and guitar lessons in the afternoon to pay what bills I had, and I was writing the rest of the day. So I started sending out my manuscripts. The rejections started piling up. 7.5 years later, I sold my first book. I know, 7.5 years. And the day I finally sold that first book was really strange. You know, it had been 7.5 years of no's, 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 and a lot of near misses too. You know, I had several manuscripts that went to acquisitions meetings and it would just fall apart last minute. I would think there was a deal coming and it would fall apart. And it was not just one book either, you know, it was several. I mean, I was writing the entire 7.5 years, so I know there were more than 10. There were far more than 10 that I submitted, and that first book of mine was rejected 86 times by agents and publishers. I know that because I kept the spreadsheet on it. It was 86 times, and that was pretty average. So, you know, I always say it was 1,000 rejections before I got the first yes. And I think that's a fair estimate, you know, 86 rejections on average, more than 10 manuscripts. Anyway, that first day, you know, when I got that offer, it was strange because, you know, in the first place, they tell you can't sell a manuscript during the holiday season, right? You know, if it gets to be close to the holidays, you ought to not submit anything. You ought to do it in January when everyone comes back, basically the publishing world shuts down. And I did sell it during the holidays. That's exactly what happened. I submitted it. I didn't know there was a rule about that in the first place. I submitted it right around Thanksgiving. And I talked to the acquisitions editor shortly thereafter. He took it to a meeting and he promised me that an offer was coming as soon as the holidays wrapped. And I had had so many near misses. I just remember sort of being sick to my stomach that whole Christmas season because I wasn't sure if it was, you know, without anything for real in hand. You know, I didn't trust much of anything anymore. So anyway, the offer did came early in January. And if you've never had, you know, an offer from a publishing house, the way it works, they'll send you kind of like a memo with the broad strokes deal, the advance, that kind of thing. And if you say yes to that, then they shoot you the contract after that. So I got that memo with the broad strokes offer. I said yes, and I swear, 2 hours later, that manuscript I sold, that was for a YA. 2 hours later, I got a call from an agent who had my middle grade novel for a while, and she wanted to offer representation. So it just felt so strange. It was 7.5 years of constant no's and near misses and disappointments, and then within the course of 2 hours and one day, I had an offer for one book and an offer from an agent to represent another. And at that point, I thought I was off and running. I don't know. Everyone who has been at writing for a while knows that just because you sell one book doesn't mean you're going to have an easy time selling another. Oh my gosh. This is a draft of the first book I published back in 2010. I think it's time to go through this manuscript pile, seriously. So the next several years were just ups and downs and ups and downs. And I did everything I could think of. I had deals with traditional publishing houses, including a couple of the big five. You know. And I even opened my own imprint and started releasing work independently. You know, I won awards. I got starred reviews. I got star reviews from Booklist and PW. And there were times in there I thought, I've got this now. Everything is going to be fine. It's going to work out now. Yeah. Then COVID hit. And I thought, well, I'll just tough this out. I'll keep kind of independent publishing. I was between agents at this time, and I thought, oh, when life gets back to normal, I'll resubmit. I did. I submitted 2 different manuscripts, one for a middle grade novel and one for an adult mystery, and I could not get signed. And I really started to think my time had come and gone. I was not at all what you would call financially stable. The reason I was able to continue writing was I had constant financial support from my family. I have been through some hard times and some doubt-ridden times, and that was maybe the hardest because I thought maybe I'd come to the end of it, and I didn't really know what to do. I thought maybe I had exhausted all my options. And then, I don't know, just out of sheer desperation, I think, I grabbed a copy of Donald Mass's book about the breakout novel. And basically what he says in there, he talks about people who were at the stage of the career that I was, kind of mid-career, not completely satisfied, not sure what to do, blaming where they were on their numbers, right? Which is what I thought. I had won awards, but I'd never had great sales numbers. And I thought, you know, that's what's dragging me down right now. And he argued that that was never the case, that if you weren't where you wanted to be as a writer, that it was your fault. You know, I'm kind of paraphrasing this, but that's what I took out of it. I have never in my life breathed such a sigh of relief. If it is about numbers, I am f***ed. But if it's not, if it's because of something I'm doing wrong, then it's something I can work on. So I started working on it in a new way. I'd always liked writing craft, you know, but I started working on it in a brand new way. I started digging into it like I never had before, and putting together, you know, I had learned so many things kind of in these disjointed pieces along the way. And I started putting them all together, kind of making a cohesive picture in my head about how to actually put a book together. I'm going to finish the dig here. I'm going to get all my manuscripts together. In the meantime, I'm going to switch this thing over to the writing advice portion of the video where I talk about that first 25% of the book, the first act, and the 2 jobs that you need to get nailed down before you do anything else. I'll meet you back here at the end of that portion. Let's face it, writing a book is one of the biggest projects you can ever take on. Before you are done, I guarantee you're going to feel like you are building a house with nothing more than a couple of hand tools. One way I make the whole thing easier on myself is just to break the book into acts. Right now, I'm working primarily with a 5-act structure. That's just my personal preference. But the idea is to plot the book out 1 act at a time. Today, we're looking at Act 1. What if I told you that Act 1 has 2 jobs to do? Just 2. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what those 2 jobs are and how to hook your reader and set up your book so that it will pay off in the most satisfying way possible. Job number 1, introduce the main character's lie. Now this one is crucial. Your main character has a self-protective lie. Where did this lie come from? In their backstory, there was a painful event. That's why backstory is important for our main characters, right? In their backstory, they had a painful event. And it was so painful that they have built up a self-protective lie that is aimed at keeping them from ever being hurt in the same way again. But it is a lie. It is not a guardrail. It is a lie. It is a false belief. And in the first act, it is, quite frankly, making your main character miserable. The plot of your book is going to be the adventure that your main character goes on in order to confront and get rid of this lie. But all we're interested in, as far as the first act goes, is just introducing this lie, right? We're not getting rid of the lie here. We're just introducing it. But how do we do that? We're going to show the main character living their normal day-to-day life according to the lie. We're going to show this lie making them miserable in their daily life. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say we've got a main character, Sarah, whose parents went through a divorce when she was a little girl. And they got in a really vicious custody battle. And in the midst of that, they were so desperate to get dirt on each other that they actually both wound up using Sarah as a spy against the other. Didn't matter what it was doing to Sarah or how it hurt her. The dirt that they wanted against each other was more important than what it was actually doing to her. So she developed a self-protective lie that you should never get close to another human being because everybody is just, in it for themselves, and they will hurt you in order to get what they want. Now remember, it's not just the details of the lie itself that are important, it's what it's doing to your main character. So in our example with our main character, Sarah, we're going to show the extent to which she has made sure she is completely isolated and has no people in her life. The extent to which she goes to avoid people. We're going to show her at work, going to work every day, not interacting with her coworkers, maybe having lunch in her car by herself. We're going to show her coming home to her apartment building and going out of her way to avoid the neighbor who has a crush on her. We're going to show her in her apartment avoiding this long string of texts she's getting over and over from family members. She's ignoring her family. And we're also going to show what this isolation is doing to her. It's got to be really wearing on her. That job of hers may not be asking much of her, but it's not fulfilling her either. And she has got to be so lonely. She has got to be just so isolated. This lie of hers has isolated her so much, it is really doing her no favors. Job number 2, introduce the inciting event. The inciting event throws your main character's world upside down. It's going to challenge their status quo. That is a good thing, because this is, obviously this is step 1 in your main character getting rid of this lie. But again, we're not interested in getting rid of the lie here. This first act is all about introductions. We introduce the lie. Now we're going to introduce this event, which is eventually going to unravel the lie. We're just introducing it here. So what's an event that could throw our main character, Sarah's life, out of balance? Let's say she finally does check in with her family. She finally answers one of these texts that keep coming in, and she finds out that her grandmother has passed away and has left her her bakery. And she specifies in the will, Sarah can do whatever she wants with the bakery. She can even sell it. But the only way she can sell it is if she runs it herself long enough that she can find 20 people within the community, 20 customers, who will sign affidavits saying that she is absolutely running this business with the same kind of connection to community and care that her grandmother once did, right? So the idea being, if Sarah understands how to run it properly, she'll sell it to the right person. But first, she's got to run the business herself in the same community-minded way that her grandmother did. Okay, we can already see how this inciting event is going to challenge Sarah's lie like nothing else. It's obviously throwing her life out of balance, and it is going to force her to interact with people and a community in a way she hasn't for years. But how do we come up with our own inciting event? How do we know that we have an event that's big enough that it will carry an entire book? A great inciting event has 3 things. A great inciting event makes the lie expensive. We can see that is going to happen literally in Sarah's case, right? She can sell the business, but only if she runs this business properly in a way that connects to community. She's going to have to get outside of herself and connect to customers and connect to the people in the community. If she doesn't, she's going to have to forfeit her inheritance. It requires the opposite of the lie to succeed. Now we see this immediately in Sarah's case, right? This woman who has purposefully not gotten close to any other human being is now going to have to forge some genuine connections to the people in her grandmother's community in order to fully inherit the business. And number 3, it arrives from an unexpected direction. In Sarah's case, she knows exactly how to stay invisible in her own daily life. At work, in her apartment, in her daily routine, she has got it mastered. But if she has to go to a completely different town where everything is new to her, it's not so easy anymore. To a great extent, this is why fish out of water stories are so great. Okay, so what I want you to do here is to write some actual scenes. I want you to write 2 scenes that are showing your main character's normal, everyday, dysfunctional life. You're introducing the lie. And I want you to try 3 different inciting event scenes. I don't want you to simply brainstorm here. I want you to write the scenes because there is absolutely something magical that happens when you interact with language. That's why pantsers love to pants. It just does. There are things that happen when you are writing descriptively, you're writing full sentences, full scenes, that just never happen when you are writing a bullet point list of brainstormed ideas, right? So what I want you to do is write the scenes, take what you've learned from writing the scenes, and then brainstorm again, and do this back and forth between actual brainstorming lists and writing actual scenes. That way, you're going to come up with the best possible lie an inciting event. Yeah. If you're curious what this thing even is, here's a clue as to the inspiration behind it. She's a fellow Springfieldian. It's also a contemporary romance with a couple of 50-year-olds. I mean, I'm 50, I'm single, I'm not dead. If you're interested in where this thing is actually gonna go, I'm gonna actually put this book up. I'm gonna serialize it on my Patreon. You can follow along. I'm also going to offer free writing resources, and I've got a book on narrative transportation coming out soon. If you like craft and you like storytelling, you're gonna love. Ooh. So, you know, am I where I would really, really like to be? Am I willing to quit and call it a day? Where is that line? Where is the line I would draw and say, it has officially been enough? I just kind of feel like we're all in this together, you know, and we should stop suffering in silence. We should tell each other the way it is. We should tell each other what we've been through. It just makes the writing community that much stronger. Go ahead and leave a comment. Tell me what your sad tale of woe is too. And I'd love to hear from you what you're working on, what you're thinking about, where you are in your career. It ain't easy, but I'm not going anywhere. I know you guys aren't either. We'll work through this together. Catch you next time, guys.